I just had to realize that had it not been for that, I would not have done these things, right? And so let's be really honest and transparent. I went through, I was promiscuous
Yes.
um, because I lost my virginity at a young age, but it wasn't my choice.
Hmm.
And so, because of that, I was looking for a father. I was looking for love.
Hmm.
I grew up in an abusive household already, a physically abusive household.
Yes.
And those were the things that I knew. I knew no different. And so, when I began to date as a 16-year-old and 17-year-old, 30 plus and 40-year-old men, right? I thought that was cool. I thought they loved me. I was like, oh, they love me.
Mm.
Really, what do I have to offer a 30 something and a 40?
So today we are tackling a very tough issue. I want you to listen. For those of you who have an empathetic mind, and that means that you're one of those people who can actually step into another person's experience their past, their present, and their future. Those who are unaware sometimes that they even stand in that space can take in information, and it can actually be harmful to us because we step in and then we don't know how to step out. So I want you to guard your thoughts as you listen, and I want you to guard your emotions and even the desires that come up. Today, my guest is Latisha Russell, and we are talking about the prevention of childhood sexual abuse. So Latisha, welcome to Hey, I'm Listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here.
Yes, we were saying that it's taken a long time for us to get here.
Yes, yes, and yes.
We've had some rescheduling, some turning around, and but we are
Different
here
time zone
together.
mix-ups, all of those things.
All of those things, but it is good to finally be with you. Today in the United States of America, there are 42 million sexual abuse survivors. And, when you consider that the American population is about 330 million, that's 12.7% too many individuals who have been exposed to something that no one should ever be exposed to, right? So I want you to just take that in for a second. 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 5 boys will be abused before they turn 18 years old. The impact is endless in terms of traumatic responses. So 30% of sexual abuse is never reported. Just think about that. Of the 42 million people who have survived it, 30% of them will never report it to anyone. And in fact, I have a lot of clients who come my way, and when they tell their story, they will end off by saying, "You're the first person I have ever spoken to about this," right? So, Latisha, let's start our conversation with a focus on prevention. I want to go there first. What are the 3 things that we must teach our children so that they protect themselves from sexual abuse? Notice I say they protect themselves.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to share with you again. I'm coming from a lived experience place, right? And I'm going to share what I teach mine. And in full transparency, it was the first one I'm going to make mention of was really difficult for me. But I learned this from, she's an SVU therapist, I think is what they call her. But
Yes.
first, for our young girls, make sure you teach them their body parts, right? So many times as moms, as women, we like to give their body parts pet names for many different reasons, right? But making sure that no matter how young they are, they truly know so that they can say no, right? So that they clearly can decipher what's play and what's real. And
Right.
so I'm going to make sure that I make mention of that first. And it
Yeah.
was a hard lesson, right? Because, my husband even says to this day, "Is that what they're only 6 and 8? It is, right?" And I get it, right? It was even uncomfortable for me early
Yes.
on, but it's so important. The other thing is making sure that you always keep the lines of communication open, right?
Mm.
Making sure that, yet again, no matter how difficult the conversation might be, you keep those lines of communication open so that your little ones are comfortable coming to you. And
Right.
what I like
I
to
want
say,
to connect 2 dots.
Yes.
Because one of the things you said is teach them the difference between play
Yes.
and, non-play. So
Yes.
does that mean you literally will teach them the difference between tickling and then touching in a particular way that
Absolutely.
might seem innocent?
Absolutely.
Does it mean you're going to teach them how to notice a look that is a particular way versus a playful, inviting look that is really
Yeah.
truly about play?
Yeah. It is, right? Because you do, as parents, we tickle, like to your point, right? We do tickle.
Yeah.
We do those fun things.
Yes.
But absolutely, you have to, and I'm not saying not to have fun with your children, and it has to always be this serious moment. But
Yes.
just in those moments, say, all right, baby girl, do you know the difference? Mom is tickling you right now, right? But if somebody ever makes you uncomfortable and does something different, this is what I want you to do. So it's trying to even incorporate those really serious conversations, because my little girl might laugh sometimes when I have those moments. She'll be like, mommy, like she thinks I'm playing, and I'll say, baby girl, mommy's just being a little serious just for this moment, can you join me? In that way she's like, all right, and I'll say, look at mommy, so that we can kind of talk and have that way. I know that
Yes.
she's not distracted by other things, but yes,
Yes.
she's giving me eye contact, and I'll say, if you look at me now, I promise this won't take long, right?
Right.
And then we'll do it, and I'll say, that wasn't long, was it? How was that?
Right.
So engaging with them
Yes.
during that, and it goes a long way, because then they know and they can decipher between.
Absolutely. So then on to your next point, which is keep the lines of communication open. Then how do you then tailor or, trail that first conversation into, okay, is everything okay? Like, how do you even notice? How do you know when to even ask that question?
It's interesting that you say that. My husband and I, we alternate with drop off and pick up. So he drops off, I pick up.
Yes.
And I hate sitting in the carpool line. I do.
Yes.
But I don't do the bus, because that is my time with them, right?
Yes.
That's not my only time, but that is time where it's fresh. They're
Yes.
just out of school.
Yes.
And I make it a point to say, how was your day, girls?
Yes.
And my 8-year-old has a tendency to say, it was fine.
Yes.
It was fine. No, tell me what fine is.
Mm.
And so I dig to
Yes.
make sure that they are talking to me, because my fine sometimes doesn't really mean I'm
It's
fine.
true, right?
Right?
Yeah.
And because as women, I always say our superpower is we're women. And so we can move. And so for me, I make sure that I am asking them those questions,
Yes.
so that they know, all right, this is my time with mommy. I need to make sure that I'm talking to her. So now when they get in the car, both will say, me first. I want to talk to mommy. And I love it, right? So I have to say, wait a minute.
Right. You've trained them to expect that we're going to have a deeper conversation.
Exactly.
Than what fine might leave us with.
Exactly. And so I absolutely I make sure that I encourage them to have that open dialogue. And then the last thing that I do, look, we live in this space today where most of moms and even dads, right, working parents, and our children are sometimes left to their own devices. Wait until mommy is off the conference call. Wait until mommy is done with this phone call, whatever that is. And so what we try and do is say, no tablets, right? Tablets down. And then we make sure that we have that additional time with them to make sure that they're prepared mentally for the next day. And you might say, man, they're only kindergarten and second grade. That's okay, right? Because we want to make sure that they are still in that space where they don't forget what we've taught them throughout the day, because they're so distracted by other things.
Wonderful.
And so just making sure, communication is key.
Yeah. So when you think about community, and the many things that are in community, there's families that are in community. So you might be doing this as part of your household, but you're part of a larger family community. You're part of a larger school community, and then you're part of the county, whatever state that you are in. So what do you think communities need to do in order to better protect children from these kinds of experiences?
I wish I had such a general or black and white answer, but I don't. But what I will say is let's normalize mental health in your schools and in the workplace.
Mm.
Let's normalize having those conversations. And unfortunately, once COVID hits, we are dealing with such a lean staff in both corporate and education these days that
Yes.
I don't think the educators really have the time to do that. And so it is just right now, that is my hashtag, is let's normalize those things so that they can make sure that they're bringing people into the schools that can still educate and talk to our little ones or our children about these things. And so for me, it truly is, when I think about, it's still that community feel, but it's still not just your teachers and your principals, but others that are able to come in and pour into your children, right? Because
Yes.
who best knows but those folks who are dealing with the things day in and day out in the community.
Exactly. And, a teacher in the classroom is not an expert. Certainly, they've had their own experience and perhaps they've had to deal with it. But oftentimes we deal with those experiences from an unhealed place. And
absolutely,
because we are unhealed, then we create another dynamic that causes a lot of problems for other people, because it becomes about our hunger and our lack of something instead of wanting to fill other people up with protection and safety. So I just love that. So we're just going to pause for a break at this moment and transition into our next segment. I want to tell you about Latisha. Latisha has a bachelor's degree in communications from Ball State University, a master's degree in organizational development and human resources from the University of Phoenix, Colorado, and is an adjunct professor. She is appointed to multiple colleges and universities. So Latisha has always touted the importance of education. For Latisha, the topic of childhood sexual abuse is a personal one. Using her own experience, she has made it her mission to inspire women of sexual trauma by sharing her story of triumph and, I'll say, overcoming.
Yes.
Latisha, you say it was your perseverance and resilience that brought you through all of this. So how old were you when the abuse started, and how long did it go on for?
Yeah, I was 7, and it had gone on for several years.
Now, according to the statistics that are out there, when the abuse starts at that age 6 or below, and then it continues for multiple years, that can cause significant damage on a number of levels. So what kind of traumatic responses, because I'm going to label this a traumatic experience, but what kind of traumatic responses would you now notice in that 7, 8, 9, even 10-year-old child?
Yeah, so I don't think I realized even until young adult age that sometimes when the body goes through trauma, you begin to block things out, right?
Yes.
So there are holes.
Yes.
And I find myself trying to piece those things, even as a 45-year-old woman today, piece those things together to try and remember, right? And so certain things are off. I don't necessarily, I'm like, I think this happened then. But the other traumatic experience is truly how it set the trajectory of my life. And I cannot.
Absolutely.
I used to try and hide the things that I had gone through and done because I was embarrassed, frankly. But I just had to realize that had it not been for that, I would not have done these things, right? And so let's be really honest and transparent. I went through, I was promiscuous.
Yes.
Because I lost my virginity at a young age, but it wasn't my choice. And so because of that, I was looking for a father. I was looking for love. I grew up in an abusive household already, a physically abusive household.
Yes.
And those were the things that I knew. I knew no different. And so when I began to date as a 16-year-old and 17-year-old, 30 plus and 40-year-old men, right? I thought that was cool. I thought they loved me. I was like, oh, they love me. Really, what do I have to offer a 30-something and a 40-year-old?
Right.
And so I found myself even in those abusive relationships, and I thought that was love. Like if
Mm,
you weren't asking me where I was going or why was I wearing this or um checking the hood of my car to see if it was warm, all of those crazy things that I look back like, did I really deal with this?
right.
But those were the things that I thought were normal
Right.
because of what I had gone through.
Well, we talk about when I do trauma therapy, I teach my clients about the trauma triangle. You know,
Mm,
it's that first thing that creates then the cycle of
yeah,
really trying to sort it out, but
yeah,
in a way harming ourselves in the sorting it out process,
yeah,
because then there's obviously someone who has victimized us and we are the victim, but there was somebody who was supposed to rescue us. So then we played this dynamic out where we place ourselves once more into the
yeah,
victim position with
yeah,
somebody who perpetrates the same sort of thing, and then
yeah.
wait for the rescue. And, until we recognize I don't have to do that to myself anymore, then the cycle continues. So, at what
Absolutely.
point did you get to that stage where you're like, I don't have to do this anymore?
It wasn't until my 30s. It wasn't.
So was
I
there
take
like
that.
a significant incident that happened that you're like, this is enough? I've like had enough of this.
Yeah. So when I realized, so I'll take that back. It was in my 20s when I realized that I needed and wanted different, right? So it was in my early 20s when, I was a different person and I saw that a different for the good. However, I never addressed all of those things. And so if you go back to when I said a few minutes ago, we as women sometimes will say, I'm fine, I'm fine. I wasn't, but it was easier not to have to explain how I was really feeling, right? It was easier because I just didn't have to go through, well, I'm really not really feeling it today, and this is why. So, with all of that bottled up at the age of 32, and I'll never forget, it's when everything came crashing down. That's when I hit my version of my rock bottom. And at 32, I was sitting on the floor in my living room with a gun in my hand, a suicide letter written, and I was done. I was just like, I don't want to be here. It was much easier for me to not have to deal with that pain anymore. I had just dealt with a pretty bad breakup. I had moved here to Georgia for a relationship.
Mhm.
Nobody knew that, right? Nobody knew I moved here for a man. It didn't work. It was toxic.
Yes.
And we went through the back and forth. Oh, I love you. I want you back. After that was done, it was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. But it was because I had never dealt with all of the past trauma.
Right.
And this trauma here wasn't new, but
Yes.
I had never dealt with it. And
Yes.
so it wasn't until then, much after then, I realized I want and deserve so much more, right? I have to love me. And even though I questioned, will I be missed? Or, do I deserve true love? Reality was it needed to come from me. And I needed to love me before anybody else could. And I need to show up for me before anybody else could. And after I realized that, I threw myself a party. 33, I threw myself a party. And it was amazing.
Wow. So you went from literally being in that place of, I am choosing to die, and then in a moment, choosing to live,
Yeah,
and then entering a celebration mode of a
I
new
did.
birth at 33. Love the number
Yeah,
33, by the
I
way,
did.
right?
I did. Yes, yes.
So, was there something in that moment that made you realize I have to love me? Like, was there a divine intervention of some kind? Did you hear a voice? Did somebody call out to you that said, don't do that? And were you able to just hear that voice so pristinely clear?
Honestly, I didn't want to die. I
Mm,
didn't. I wanted to break the generational cycle and curse of what all the other women in my family had dealt with, especially my mom. And I deserved that, right? I deserved to show up for myself. And this isn't to negate what other people go through, Dr. Joan, but I didn't want to that was too easy. That was
mm,
too easy. And
mm.
I refused to do that.
Yes, yes, that's powerful because the choice to live, and then with the motivation I'm going to shift this, not just for me, but I'm going to shift it for the generations to come. My children, their children's children will live, and they will have a desire to live, and the abuse will end.
Yeah.
So is your life now in a space where you no longer see abusive people? Do they still come in some shape, form?
My life is such now that I choose who I want to be in my space.
Yes.
Right? I decide to say, not today. Right? So the answer is, some people try to creep up in there and try and, do certain things because, right, abuse comes in so many different forms.
It does.
But I choose to say yes to me. And as a result, I feel nothing to say no, not today from you. That's the answer.
How did you come to the place of teaching yourself that lesson? I choose to say not today.
Running myself ragged, right? I was a people pleaser. I am a people pleaser. Let's say that.
Part of the pattern of abuse, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I noticed though that it was just draining and it was tired, it was exhausting. And there are times and had been times where I'm running so much and I'm running for other people so much that come weekends, I would sleep the vast majority of the day because I was so tired.
Yes.
And I couldn't continue that cycle. Right. And so it was that moment where I was just like, all right, if I can't do it, I can't do it. Right. I cannot do it.
Yes.
And so I'm still learning it every day to say yes to me, right? But still be able, if I can attend and do things for other people, then I will. And for me, it's where my struggle is it's a balance of, I've given someone my word to say, I'm going to be there to support you, no matter how tired I am. I can't, but I can't. I've given them my word.
Yes.
I can't say I can't go today, right? That's the struggle, because I might not feel well, but I'm going to still show up because I've given you my word. That's where my struggle is today.
Right. And it is a struggle, right? Because you want to live with the integrity of, if I give you my word, I'm going to be there. And yet at the same time, you've also given yourself the word, I'm going to protect me. I'm going to serve me. I'm going to help me. I'm going to care for me. So the question is always, okay, how do I balance the two?
Yes.
Especially when I don't expect this to come today.
Yeah.
I get that. And I think that's seriously just a growth. That just means you're in the next phase of your growth, where it's like, okay, two really important things, but what can I choose, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Stay with us as we move into the second part of our interview with Latisha Russell.